Good afternoon, Wanderers. It's the Wandering Hermit here. Just doing the 2018 YouTube Pagan Challenge for February. This video is on the letter C. So the subject I've chosen today is the subject of crystals. Now, I can imagine a lot of other people are doing videos on crystals as well, but you know, it's a popular subject. Everyone loves crystals. I think everyone uses crystals at some point in their practice. So yeah, crystals just seems like the way to go. So first of all, we got to ask, what are crystals? Crystals are structures, molecular structures formed of, a combination of atomic elements. So normally what you'd have is a series of atoms that come together under certain conditions to form that structure. Now, it's usually a combination of immense pressure and immense heat. Now, heat is the key here, because what is heat? Heat is vibration. So if you take these elements and slap them all together in a very, very tight space and then apply very, very high vibration to them, it breaks down their individual gravitational structures, breaks down the weak force and the strong force fields around them so that they can actually merge and form these structures. Now, the amazing thing about crystals is that they grow like any other organic structure on the planet. They grow over time. So that's because when the atoms come together to form the molecules, those molecules then replicate over time, and they branch out and they duplicate and they create these fractal patterns, and that's where we get the crystalline structure from. Now, each different type of crystal will be formed by a different combination of atoms. So your clear quartz crystal is going to be different to your amethyst crystal, which is going to be different to your tiger's eye crystal, for example, because it's different elements that make up each one. So now that we've established how crystals are formed, let's look at actually what crystals do. Now, we've already established that they are self-replicating. They grow like plants do or like animals do. Now, this is interesting on another level, because the physicist and engineer Nikola Tesla once said that even though we can't understand the life of a crystal, it is nevertheless a conscious being. And crystals are themselves living organisms, you could say. They don't have the same bodily structure as a plant or an animal, but they do have a set structure, and they do grow within the confines of that structure, and they develop their own consciousness. They can communicate with each other, and they communicate with other organic life forms as well. How do they do this? Well, animals typically communicate to each other through a mixture of sounds and body language and pheromones. But also there is another level of communication entirely, which is more intuitive or telepathic, some might say. Plants communicate to each other through pheromones, through cross-pollination, and also through interlinking root systems, where they exchange information through water, which is very interesting. Crystals, on the other hand, communicate energetically. So each crystalline structure will have its own unique electromagnetic frequency. Just as all other life forms have an electromagnetic field, so do crystals. What the crystal does is it passes information out from itself through that energetic field, but it also receives information from that energetic field also. So this lends itself to the mechanics of what actually happens when we are working with crystals. If I were to hold an amethyst in my hand, an amethyst, typically, because of the atoms that go into it and the resonant frequency that it is vibrating at, it receives information of you could say, whether it's called information or whether you just want to see it as energy. I mean, information is energy, and it's passed through energy through, example, light. Fiber optic is just information passed through light, or in the form of light, and then reinterpreted by the machines that we create. So in the same way, if I hold an amethyst, it's receiving energy from my body. Now, the energy that it is receiving is polarized to a negative electrical charge. So it's taking my negative electrical energy and it converts it into positive electrical energy and then puts that back out. So what it does, it transmutes negative energy into positive, which is why amethysts are so perfect for, cleaning areas or cleaning a human energy field. They are perfect for transmuting negative into positive because that's what they're made to do. In the same way, and a clear quartz crystal, for example, especially rutilated quartz, this is the interesting thing. A rutilated quartz crystal receives information through electrical fields, but rather than converting it, it stores it. So if you look at a rutilated quartz crystal, it's said that the more lines it has or the more grooves it has inside its structure, the more information it has received. So if you're working with quartz crystal, it's really, it's good for storing information. It's good for generating energy for whatever magical working you're doing. If you like working with crystal grids, it's always great to have a clear quartz crystal right at the center of that because it generates electrical energy, which then energizes all of the crystals around it, but it also receives information back from those crystals and stores it. So that in future, if you are then using that again to charge the crystals, it's amplifying the energy that it's received from the likes of your tiger's eye and your amethyst and your bismuth. It receives that energy, amplifies it, and then puts it back out to rejuvenate those other crystals. So it's a self-energizing crystal. It's really, really good. So going back to tiger's eye is another very popular crystal that people use, usually for protection. Tiger's eye is actually it's the root ore. It's the ore stone from which we get what's it called? The insulation stuff. It's poisonous. Anyway, I've forgotten the name of it, but that's the whole point. Insulation. Insulation protects a home from external cold, but it also keeps heat in. So, in that sense, what tiger's eye does is it keeps one set of negative energies away whilst insulating another type. So, because tiger's eye is typically attuned to a positive electrical vibration, it keeps all negative vibration away from itself whilst insulating the positive. So it's a brilliant protection stone. So when we're working with crystals, it's really, really good to know what minerals that crystal is made of, what atoms go into forming that crystal. It's also very, very useful to know the fractal structure of the crystal itself. So you get some that branch out like trees, so it'll go like that and then like that, and each of these will have another one of those, so it branches out like a tree. Others, they will fold over themselves, and then they'll create another fold, which then folds over itself again. I can't indicate that with my hands, I don't know why I'm trying. But it's very, very useful to know the molecular structure of each crystal, because that will give you an idea as to how it operates on an energetic level. Because what we see in matter is just a visual representation of what's happening energetically. So, furthermore, it's also very useful when working with crystals to know which ones are negatively charged, which ones are positively charged. Because then if you're trying to use, for example, a negatively charged crystal such as black tourmaline, which is brilliant for grounding energies, it's really good for keeping energy at a relatively low frequency. If you're then using that with angelite, the two are going to cancel each other out. Or selenite is another one. Selenite is actually pretty much exactly the same as black tourmaline in its molecular structure, which means they operate in the same way. So tourmaline will keep energy at a very, very low steady vibration, whereas selenite will increase energetic vibration to a very, very high level. So the two will cancel each other out straight off, because they're the same energy at different frequencies, which is why one's black, one's white, just so you know. The lower an energy frequency is, the more light frequencies it will absorb into itself. That's why black clothing absorbs all light. That's why it's black, because no light rays are being reflected back at us for us to see it. Conversely, white reflects all other light frequencies because it's already a very high vibration, so it doesn't need to absorb any more energy. So that's why white actually has all of the colours of the spectrum in it, and that's why we see all colours of the spectrum when white light is refracted. So the same applies to your crystals. If something is a very, very dark colour, it means it's more of a low vibrational energy. Garnet is another example. Garnet is a very, very deep browny red, so it's quite a low, steady frequency stone. So that's really good for grounding your energy. It's very good for leveling your energy out. It's very good for stress relief. It's also good for regulating the body's cycles. So how crystals interact with the physical body? They don't just change our energy signature. They change the way our body works on a biological level, on a molecular level. Because when you consider that the entire human body is governed by electrical impulses from the brain, then you begin to understand that when we hold a stone, our bodies then attune electrically to the frequency of that stone, which has a knock-on effect on the rest of the electrical system in our bodies. So if you're feeling a little bit down in the dumps, it means that, you know, your electrical impulses are firing relatively slowly. Your brain waves are very, very low. So rather than your brain waves being like this, they're more like this. So what you'd need is a high energy stone to increase the vibrational frequency of your electromagnetic field, which then impacts your brain waves and thus the neurons that are being fired. So if you get a high vibrational stone, such as selenite, that increases your vibrational output. And then it takes your brainwaves from being like this to being like this. So it increases mental functioning. It increases the replication rate, the rate of mitosis of the cells in your body. So it helps speed up the healing rate of the body. It helps to speed up the rate of renewal of your cells. They say, for example, you shed your skin every 7 years. So every 7 years, there's a brand new skin that you're wearing. If you are constantly at a low frequency, that process will take longer. So it could be every 10 years. But if you're operating at a high vibrational frequency, that process will be accelerated. So it could be every 5 years. So every 5 years, you're a new you. On another note, the endocrine system of the human body is very, very, very complex. The endocrine system is governed by the likes of the thymus gland, the thyroid gland, your adrenal glands, and other such things. They regulate the hormone output of the body as well, but they are all regulated by the neurons in your brain. So if you're working with stones and you have an endocrine condition, it's good to try to figure out which parts of your endocrine system are out of balance, because then you can use the appropriate stones to try to counteract that. So, for example, if you have hypothyroidism, your thyroid is operating at a lower rate than what it should be. The thyroid gland is typically associated in Eastern tradition with the throat chakra. So, if it's underactive, then it'd be good to work with bright blue stones, because those bright blue stones, they operate at the vibrational frequency consistent with that colour, which is also consistent with that particular frequency of electromagnetism. So if you're working with blue stones, it's more likely to stimulate the action of the thyroid gland. So it'll actually regulate thyroid function, theoretically. There are various studies that have demonstrated this, but not enough studies to demonstrate it empirically. So I'm not going to say working with stones is going to, heal hypothyroidism, but it is one alternative treatment. So it's a very interesting and complex subject, crystal work. I do use a lot of crystals. I mean, some of you may have seen on my Facebook page, on The Wandering Hermit, there's a couple of photos there of the crystal collection that we've got at the moment, and it's getting bigger. I mean, I've seen a lot of people out there on YouTube that, you know, who have massive amounts of stones, and you know, I can only aspire to accumulate that many, because whatever it is that you're trying to do, there is a stone for everything. So do a lot of research. There are countless books out there, encyclopedias of minerals and such things. Do as much research as you can, learn about as many stones as you can, collect as many stones as you can, because they are extremely useful. A couple of things to note when working with crystals is one which I saw on the Spirit Science channel a long time ago. He mentioned something called the crystal movement, which is basically a tendency for crystals to abandon you once they've served their purpose, or they feel that it's their time to move on to somebody else, to another purpose in life. You can be carrying a crystal around with you for months, and then suddenly it will disappear, and you'll have absolutely no idea where it's gone, how you could have lost it, or anything, and it will go. Usually around that time, another crystal will come to your attention, and you will then acquire that crystal instead. Whether that is, you know, the individual influencing their world, or whether it's the actual individual will of the crystal itself, we can't know, but it's still an interesting thing to consider. The other thing to consider when working with crystals is that, I did have that point, but I've lost it. It's interesting to note that some crystals aren't actually the genuine deal. For example, citrine is one that is very, very easily faked. What people will do, they'll take a clear quartz crystal, which is very common, or just a white quartz, and then they will burn it to give it a sort of goldy yellow hue, and then pass it off as citrine. It's not real citrine, it's just burnt quartz. So it's good to keep in mind that there are some fakes out there. A lot of amethyst is just stained glass. So just keep a very sharp eye and try to look for the little individual details which will tell you whether or not it's a genuine crystal or not. That's why I say when looking, for example, at amethyst, hold it up to the light, you'll be able to see the actual pattern of the molecular structure in there. Because even though it's on a molecular level, it's fractal, so you will see a pattern when you hold it up to the light. Even if it's a tumble stone, if it's been smoothed over, once you hold it to the light, you will see the pattern through the crystal. Stained glass won't have that. Okay, so I've rambled on for quite a while. I hope I've given you some useful information that you may or may not have had about crystals. There's plenty more out there, so as I say, do as much research as you possibly can. I will be uploading my video on D in the next couple of days. So until then, I wish you all much love, many blessings, and may your gods be with you. Bye for now.